Oh, you guys can't even see it. Also, let's get this out of here. No longer October. Don't care about that. Was it over? Literally, I think that 1989 Taylor's version vault tracks are like one of the best things that has happened to me this year. Hello, it's me. Welcome back to another monthly reading wrap-up, October edition. As always, I go into these videos unprepared. I just know that I have the list of books that I read this month on my Notion, and we are just going to power through these and review them. I got them right here, up on top. Don't look, because that's cheating. Why are you guys spoiling the video for yourself? Just sit back and enjoy, okay? Maybe you guys are cracking open a cold one. Imagine if that would have just like... Oh Lord, I think about jumping off a very tall something. Do you want to get up here, or do you want to keep like roaming around? Also guys, can somebody let me know if you guys want like a reading vlog where I read like the Hunger Games, but I go book by book, and so like I'll read like the Hunger Games and then watch the movie, and then read like Mockingjay and watch Mockingjay, watch Catching Fire, and then read Catching Fire, watch Catching Fire. If you guys want me to do that, please let me know, because I kind of want to do it right now. Like I want to do it at this very moment. I don't want to film this video or edit it. I just want to read the Hunger Games and then watch the Hunger Games. Blocking her in. She's not allowed to leave. Let's talk about the books that I read in October. I wish I had my microphone. I don't know where it's at. I used to have that carpool karaoke microphone. Okay. Who's ready to sit and review these books? I know I'm not. Starting off this month, we have the 4 books that I read in my Reading Dark Academia for the first time. I read all of these books, and if you want to see like my actual kind of reactions and stuff to these books, go watch it over there, okay? I'm just here to review them. This video is going to be a tough one to edit. Very first book that I read this month was If We Were Villains by M.L. Ria. I'm gonna say I went to Dark Academia kind of having a very vague and loose just interpretation of it. Literally didn't really know much about it at all. I think when I thought of Dark Academia, I just thought of kind of like a dark autumn setting. The characters dress a certain way and they kind of behave a certain way. I was right about that, but I guess I didn't understand. I feel so stupid when I say this. I just want to preface it that I realize how stupid I sound. I didn't understand that Dark Academia meant that it was a dark book subject matter wise. For the most part, the Dark Academia, it's because there's dark matter in the book, and I went into that not knowing it. Didn't know that was just a thing. And that's just not really my vibe, and I'm gonna be honest, after doing the whole entire Dark Academia video, spoiler alert, I kind of came to the conclusion that Dark Academia is not for me. But anyway, If We Were Villains by M.L. Ria, I gave this book a 3 stars. This book is about a group of college friends, and they're very close-knit, and they're all very, very, very into Shakespeare, and they're kind of doing this huge Shakespearean play, and something happens within the friend group. You have a then and now perspective timeline of what happened. You're kind of trying to unravel this mystery. I don't know if there's supposed to be plot twists, but I did guess the plot twist of this book. I guessed it from literally, I think, the very beginning. I do also want to say that I went into these books pretty blind, knew if anything very little about them. However, I think this, one of the ones that I enjoyed the most out of this, if this did not heavily talk about Shakespeare and that's just lost on me, that's on me, then I would have rated this a 4 stars, because out of all of the characters and stuff that I read, these ones were a little bit more tolerable for me. Here's the thing about Dark Academia, they're kind of insufferable. These characters were fine. They were fine. I liked the setting, I liked everything else, but like I said, I think it just comes down to that this book is so heavily about Shakespeare that it's kind of lost, because the author uses Shakespearean plays and quotes from Shakespeare to kind of use as a metaphor throughout the whole entire book, and I know that that's things that are supposed to have an effect on me that are lost on me, so the book can't be really a higher rating than that. Okay, next up we have In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I cannot remember what I rated this book originally, but as I have thought on it, I have decided that it is a 3 star. This is actually a Dark Academia thriller, and this one has kind of the same setting. A group of college friends at this college, and it's the fall time, kind of that dark setting. Something happens, and you have the then and now. The then is obviously when they were in college, and then the now is them at a college reunion, and there's a character that is trying to figure out what happened years ago. These people, honestly, there was only I think 2 or 3 characters in this book that I actually just like. The main character, strongly disliked. She just was not a character for me. I said this and I don't know if it makes sense, but I feel like when you are reading a thriller, you're never going to, most of the time, love the main character's point of view that you're in, and sometimes you don't even really root for them because thrillers are kind of different in that sense. And in this one, I was not rooting for this character at all. She honestly pissed me off on multiple different occasions where I was like, I can't do this. Like, this woman is literally insane. Like, and not even in a like, oh, she's doing crazy things, but just more of just like, I hate being in this character's mind, and like she's doing awful things to other people and kind of passing it off as like this weird like internal struggle. I don't know, it just wasn't my cup of tea personally, and I also did guess all of the like plot twists with this one as well. There's actually a few books this month that I deserve a medal for finishing. And if you guys follow me on TikTok, you guys get the inside scoop because sometimes I'll go on TikTok and talk about this. But that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I finally read this. I think I've had this on my shelf for I don't even know how long. This is like a dark academia fantasy, and it's like an adult fantasy. This is not YA. I do want to throw up the trigger warnings right now that happened in this book because I feel like out of all of these dark academia books, I saw the most stuff about Ninth House. But what I failed to see and had no clue was about the trigger warnings that were in this book. And there are some very, very extreme triggering subjects and things that happen in this book that just left me feeling like sick to my stomach, which I'm sure people are going to say like that's the whole entire point, like that's why these are written. But for me, I'm just gonna be honest, if I knew going into it that that's what the trigger warnings were, I don't think that I would have ever wanted to read this book because it's just not something that I like to read at all. It makes me feel very queasy and just not good. I am gonna throw those up for you guys. That way you guys know going into it. If you guys have ever wanted to put this on your radar, that's the trigger warnings that you have. I actually ended up rating this I think I initially said a 3.75 and I changed it to a 3.5. Wow. A 0.25 rating difference. Me in this book, it's very, very complicated. You're following your main character, Alex, and she is at Yale. She's not at Yale because she like got into Yale. She's at Yale because she has this specific power where she can see ghosts. There is a secret society at Yale, and they have her enroll at Yale. That way they can use her in their secret societies for things that she needs to do. And that's kind of what you're following this whole entire book about. You kind of go into past, not like perspectives, but she kind of tells the past sometimes in the book, and you see kind of what has happened to her in her childhood. Most of it's at Yale. One of the things that I thought was pretty like unique and cool about this book was that I think I saw a Leigh Bardugo interview where they said that they took like the conspiracy theories about Yale, because there's like a lot of conspiracy theories that Yale has like these secret societies that people don't know about. Decided to write a book about it and kind of make it like paranormal and fantasy and kind of dark. I was pretty intrigued by that. So if you guys are into stuff like that, like conspiracies and like secret societies and like the background of Yale, I would recommend this book. But I ended up giving it a 3.5 because although it was hard for me to get through, once I did get through it, it was enjoyable for me. Like, I kind of was like, okay, this is like entertaining, and I can definitely see why people like love this book, but I don't love it, but it's fine. The end of the book got really good where we finally started kind of building up to where I feel like if I go into the second book, I feel like it'll really, really take off, and the second book may be higher rated than this one because it's like actually taking off, where I feel like in this book, it's a pretty thick book. It takes a long time to build everything up, and the story kind of felt unfinished. Like when I finished it, I was like, this feels super unfinished. It kind of felt like you stopped the book just in the middle of like a big thing, and then just the book ended. And I understand people are like, that's the whole entire point of like a cliffhanger. Even when you read a cliffhanger, you're like, oh my gosh, I wonder what happens in the next book. This one just kind of felt like you were on that momentum of like, okay, things are finally starting to get going for the first time in the book, and then it just kind of ended. And you're like, wait, I'm out of pages to read. This is weird. Like, did somebody cut out the end of the book? No, that's just where the book ended. And then we have The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which is actually not a book that I read this month. This is a book that I DNF'd this month because I got to page. What page did I get to? 250. This book is just not for me. If dark academia is not for me, this is not for me. A lot of people say that If We Were Villains is essentially just like Donna Tartt's The Secret History, just kind of throw Shakespeare in there, which I will say they are very similar. So I thought that I was going to like this one a lot better because it was missing that Shakespearean aspect and it's just more like character focused. When I tell you how mundane and boring this book was, at one point I'm reading and it's just pages among pages of just this monologue of how one of the characters is going through a hard winter. I'm gonna be honest, I would have got the same emotional effect if you would have put this in one paragraph. And here's the thing specifically about this copy of the book. These pages are like Bible thin. There are not, how many chapters are in this book? Like 8, a little bit more than 8. And this book is like thick. This is a thick book. This is a long book. All of the chapters are extremely long. Okay, and all of that, I was like, I'm still gonna push through it. The characters in this book, I got to the part where I was like, okay, we're kind of at where I feel like it's the climax of the story because you kind of learn what happened, because this book is yet again another like group of friends at college. Something has happened in their friend group that is detrimental that you are learning about. And you get to that, and I thought, okay, the story's gonna start picking up. No, we just go back to mundane details about the characters, and then it starts getting incestuous. And I was so confused because when I DNF'd this book, I went on TikTok and I was like, do people not feel strongly about like the things that are talked about in this book? Like not even the incest, just there's also other topics that are like wrote about in this book and characters that kind of talk certain ways that you're just kind of disgusted by. Not kind of, you just are disgusted by. And nobody talks about that. I can't praise a book or even like a book or really give a book the time of day that the subject matter that was in this book and the way that things, just no. It's a no from me. Okay, then I started reading for funsies, which was like my favorite part of the month. So I finally got to read Hopeless by Elsie Silver. This is the last book in the Chestnut Spring series, so I was so excited because this is my like most anticipated book of the series. Ever since I read the first book, I have wanted to read about Beau, and he is one of the brothers. And I can remember reading like the first book and being like, oh, which book is Beau's? The first 3 books were out, so there were 2 other books out at the time. And I was like, oh, which one of these are Beau's? And then none of them were Beau's. And then I was like, oh, Beau's isn't even talked about being out yet. This was a highly anticipated thing for me. I will say, I don't want to use the word disappointed because I don't think I had anything built up. I was just excited to read about this. I did give this a 4 stars because the girl in this book, it was nothing against Beau. Beau was giving everything that he needed to give as an individual character. He was giving everything that he needed to give. The girl was my problem with this book because I hate in romances, one of my book icks, if you will, and it's a very like minuscule problem where honestly if you guys just sat down and like had a conversation about it, it wouldn't even be an argument. It's just like the need of a conversation. One of the main characters blows it out of proportion and it turns into like an explosive argument. You stop talking, all of these things happen. That is what happened in this book. And when I tell you that this one was minuscule and she starts ignoring this man is not in the wrong. I'm just gonna say it. If you've read this book, you might know what I'm talking about. He is not in the wrong in this situation, okay? He goes to her door every single day and he makes her breakfast, gets her a coffee every single day without fail, and tries to keep on talking to her, and she's just giving him the cold shoulder. Not to mention everything else that he had already been doing for her throughout the book. When I tell you guys that frustrated me so much that I went into Isaac's room, Isaac could not care less about this, okay? But I needed somebody to hear me. And I went to his room and I literally was sitting there and ranting and ranting and ranting about it because it really would, oh my gosh, it like, I almost blew a gasket, for real. Just that's like an example of like, that happened a few times throughout the book where I feel like Beau was like giving every single thing that he needed to give and she was just kind of lacking as a character and in the relationship where I was just like, this is also an age gap romance. You guys know that that's not my jam, but this one, it was like she's like, is she 20 something and he's like in his like early or whatever 30s, but just the immaturity that was coming from her character was just so mind-blowing to me because I think, yeah, her character's older than I am, and I feel like I'm not the most mature person, okay? I am immature. And my other grievance, listen, my other grievance is that this book was insta-love. And that is like my OG book ick. Like when I got older and started reading like romance books and stuff, my first ick that I ever felt was the insta-love. And look at how thick this book is. Everybody take a second. Do you see how thick this book is? I thought that this was gonna be a slow burn and I was fully like buckled in, popcorn, got a drink, I'm ready for it, okay? Someone call up Miss Swift because I'm ready for it. This it wasn't giving. It wasn't giving that. It gave insta love. But other than all of that, I love the Chestnut Spring series so much. And I did like both of their characters. I didn't dislike the main girl. I did like her, and there were things that I was just like eating up. Like, I was literally like, had my Kindle in the car, and me and Isaac were in the car, and I was giggling. And he was like, what are you reading? And I was like, I literally can't. I actually can't tell you because it's so embarrassing. Like, if you looked over at my Kindle right now and like understood that I'm giggling at words on screen at that point, but words on a paper, really. And when books make me feel like that, it's just awesome. Okay, in the Chestnut Spring series, it's a 5-star series for me. I love it. I don't care if anybody thinks that it's kind of like cheesy or bad. I think that they're absolutely amazing, and I thought that Beau lived up to everything that he needed to live up to. Next up, you guys, this is one of my favorite reads of the month. One of my favorite reads of the month, and that is Caught Up. Okay, and listen, this is wild to me. This is the third book in the Windy City series. The first book is Mile High. The second book is The Right Move. When I started with the Windy City series and I read Mile High, I actually DNF'd that book. That's one of the books that I DNF'd for the year. And so I was like, you know what though? A lot of people say that the second book is like way better. Rated that, honestly, even as I think about it, 4.5 stars. I freaking love that book. I love that couple so much. That book is a 4.5. Swinging with this, the more I think about it, 4.75. It was so close to a 5 that it just didn't give me that 5-star feeling that I just have. Like, I feel like sometimes you just read a book and you know in this little heart of yours that it's a 5-star. I didn't get that feeling, but I did freaking love this book. First of all, Kai, the guy in this book, this is a single dad trope for those of you. And the girl is babysitting his kid because her dad like is one of the coaches on the MLB team that the guy plays on. So she kind of like travels with him and she is his nanny essentially. He is described multiple times, like he wears glasses and he's described kind of like Clark Kent-ish. I was eating this up because the way that this man is, like, protective, but not in a toxic, like, because you guys know what I mean. Like, I didn't use words right there, but you guys get the vibe. You guys know what I'm talking about. He was protective in the way that's like, you're gonna be respectful, because he kind of thought that it was like disrespectful the way that other guys on the team were talking to her, and she would like laugh it off. Like, she didn't have a problem with it. It wasn't anything that was like gross. It was just like them kind of like, you know, like, oh, and she was like, but he was like, that's disrespectful. Don't talk to her that way. And I was like, no, because you're right. No, because you're right. Just their relationship, the things that this guy did, he was so thoughtful, so sweet, and like genuinely like thought out everything that he was doing. And I love when men think, because you don't get it a lot. Even in romance books, in real life and in romance books, you don't get men thinking a lot. And so when men kind of think through their actions, nothing is better. I literally think the only reason this wasn't a 5-star is because, again, one of my least favorite things in a book is when you have the person, I'm only here until this date, and then like, so we're not going to work out because I'm leaving at the end of the summer. And then you just always know that it's just like not going to work out like that. Like, you just know. It's a romance book. Like, you know. And then you are going through the whole entire thing where it's like, no, we can't be in a relationship because I'm leaving and I'm whatever. It's like, are you listening to your heart? I'm in your head, so I know what you're thinking, but you're pushing this man away, and that was so annoying. Like, they would make so much progress, and then the girl in this book would push them 10 feet back. Why? 4.75. I really love this book. Okay, what's next? What is next? So then I read these two fun little books for October in my little mini reading blog. So I read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches first. I am so happy that after this video, I will never have to say this unnecessarily long title again. Nothing against the author. Saying that is a mouthful, and I don't enjoy saying it. This book I gave a 3 stars. I think it's kind of like reminds me of like The Kiss Curse and the X-Hex, except I love both of those books. Those books are like a 4-star for me. I just love those books. But with this one, it was like the same thing. It's so cozy. So, and I say that you can read this like anytime. Even if it's not October, it's not fall, I feel like you can pick this up any time of the year. It has that found family trope. There are kids in this book, but they're not written in that like unenjoyable way that sometimes I feel when I read like a book with kids in it. It was in a very adorable way, and the magic in this book was also cozy, where like sometimes you'll read a fantasy and you're like, I don't get this. This magic was just straightforward, and it was very just cute. All of the things that were talked about, like the way that she like did spells and everything, was cute. Honestly, there is like a subplot of romance in this book. I didn't even pay attention to it. I didn't really feel anything between them at all, but I honestly don't feel like I was reading the story for the romance. I was just kind of in it and thought it was very cute and enjoyable. And then I read My Roommate is a Vampire, and I ended up giving this one a 4 4 stars. I said this in the video, so I won't say it again. I just look at books like this and I'm like, I know what I'm reading this for. You know what I mean? I'm just reading it for the vibe. I'm not like, ooh, let's judge the literature and the storyline. Like, I'm just reading it to have fun. And so I picked this up and it was funny and it was charming, and I just thought that I was having a great grand old time reading it. It's such a short and easy read. It's about the girl, and she basically is kind of in this rough spot. She lives in Chicago and she sees this listing for an apartment for super cheap, and it's a super nice apartment, and she's like, okay, like what could go wrong? And she finds out that the guy's a vampire, and he was from like years and years and years, like hundreds of years ago. And so he is very like Victorian, and so she is kind of trying to help him get like modernized, that way he can blend in with like the modern day. It's cute. He talks about Taylor Swift. He's a 300-year-old vampire, and one of the first things that he did was research the 1989 era. I really put all of these out of whack for like the order that I read these, but anyway, this book came out this month. This was one of my most anticipated releases and read. That is none other than A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. This is a part of the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. And if you guys know and watch the videos, you guys know I talk about this all the time. I have been waiting for this book and I was disappointed. I ended up giving this book a 4 stars. If you watch the video, I think I've like lowered my rating. I started out with a 5 and then I went to a 4.5, and I have settled at a 4. Like, that's what it is. I'm not changing it after this. It is a 4 stars for me. The series is a 5-star series, but I think only the second book was like a 5-star for me. This one, I just really was confused because it almost didn't feel like it was in the same series at all. I can't really say much of what it's about since it is the final book in the trilogy and like there's so much stuff that happened. I will say it in roundabout ways. The way that the book ended off, you go right back into it. Like, it really wastes no time getting back into the story, but I feel like we wasted so much time on meaningless stuff. It just kind of felt like the book went by so fast, but I felt like nothing was happening in the book. And the other books were like going and doing stuff. They're going on these kind of like expeditions and missions to figure out like the missing pieces of the puzzle, how stuff fits into the story, all of these things. And in this book, we didn't do like any of those journeys. I think we went on like one, and that was like at the end of the book that we started doing that. The whole entire build up to this thing that I have been waiting for, because honestly, when I read the first 2 books, there's like a romance that people really obsess over, and I was just kind of like left like kind of looking around, like I didn't like, I feel a romance, but not enough to like be a die-hard like fan for it, because I feel like it wasn't written, like I feel like it was written where you're like, oh yeah, you can definitely tell there's something there, but I thought like in this book we were definitely going to spend majority of the book kind of building up that romance, and we didn't at all. And then so when we get to the end, I would say probably the last 10% felt like whiplash. All of a sudden nothing was happening, and then we jumped to the end and I honestly couldn't even comprehend what happened, because so much stuff started happening at the end that I was like, this would have worked way better if you would have spaced all of those events out throughout the book. And then just even the way that the book ended, I was so disappointed by, because I was like, you feel like you're kind of waiting for this buildup of this certain thing to happen, and then it just kind of felt lackluster, because then the book ended. Like, something happens and then the book ends, but not in a like cliffhanger way, but it is kind of in a finality of a way. You just still kind of are left feeling like, oh, like I didn't get really like anything that I was hoping for. But that also can be fallen on me, that I set high expectations for something that doesn't need high expectations set. So A Curse for True Love, still love the series. It's absolutely a 5-star series. This one just didn't hit like I anticipated it to. However, another book that I was really excited to read was Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This came out this month as well. Wow. I just realized how long October felt, because I'm thinking about how this released and I went to Jersey like the day after this released. Jersey feels like months ago. I don't remember doing that. Anyway, don't know why I just had like a crisis in the middle of this video. Wildfire by Hannah Grace. I am rating this book a 4.5 stars. Oh my gosh, I loved it. If you guys don't know, this is a part of the Maple Hill series, and the first book is Icebreaker, which I feel like took the book talk world by storm last year around this time. It was literally in September, and I know that because I was going on my family vacation and I remember reading it on my Kindle in the car. I was reading Icebreaker on the way there. It's like such a engraved memory for me, and I loved Icebreaker. Like, loved it. It is definitely like my favorite hockey romance that I've ever read. And then we have this book, and technically this guy is on the hockey team as well. You do not see anything about hockey in this book. I was not complaining about that because I do partake in sports romances. I do like sports romances, but they're not like my go-to genre and I don't absolutely love them. So I kind of like that, like, we already knew that this guy, because we saw him in Icebreaker, we already knew that he's like on the hockey team, but it takes place at summer camp. So basically it's about Russ and Aurora. They go to the same college and they kind of share this night together, and then they end up going to the summer camp to work as camp counselors for the like summer, and then they see each other and they're like, oh crap, like we are here at the summer camp together and this is kind of awkward, and then you go on from there. I loved it because if there's one thing that Hannah Grace knows how to do, it's have people communicate. Oh my gosh, if you guys remember when I read Icebreaker, one of the things that I like praised that book for was that the main guy in that book was like communicating. He was communicating. And if you guys know me, you guys know that miscommunication is one of my least favorite things in the world. Hate it, okay? I love that Hannah Grace continuously throughout her books does where like the characters communicate. Like there may be like a tiny miscommunication, but then the characters communicate and then they're like, that's stupid that we didn't communicate. We need to work on that. Like thank you for having representation in relationships of communication. I feel like a lot of times in romances, they use the miscommunication trope as like a third act conflict, a third act breakup. It's like a plot device. I feel like it's just annoying because it's like, that's already an annoying thing in relationships and it's annoying to like read about. Anyway, I love that about this book, that the characters communicate, and I also loved the guy in this book so much. He was my favorite. Like the guy, he was just my absolute favorite. What is it about Hannah Grace? She knows how to write her guys, okay? She knows how to write her men in these books. Even though it takes place at a summer camp, it doesn't feel like a summery book. I read this at this time of year. I feel like you could read this at any time of year, and it just feels so cozy. Their romance was so sweet, and I feel like their feelings for each other were so sweet. Really started being friends and really liked each other and got to like know each other and communicated with each other. Again, I'm sorry, I keep on bringing up the communication. It's just something that I love. Only 2 more books you have to hear me yell about. Are you guys so excited? I finally read Red, White, and Royal Blue. I think, gosh, let me think about the list of OG Book Talk books. I think this was the only one that I hadn't read. I read this for the first time. Obviously, what is going on? It's about like the prince, is he the Prince of England? And then like this, oh my god. I ended up giving this a 3 stars because I will say I enjoyed it. I gave it a 3 stars because I honestly don't think I'm going to think about this book like after I read it. I love the way that these characters were written though. They are extremely witty. They're very intelligent. Made me feel very stupid at times, I will say. The thing that makes it a 3 stars for me is that I got so bored. Like I think once I got to like the 40% mark, it felt like the book could have ended. Like it felt like we were there and it felt like the book could have ended. And there were a lot of different plot lines like that I just didn't care about. And I just felt so bored that then I started getting to the point where I was like, I'm ready for this book to be over type of thing. Yeah, I don't have very strong, I honestly kind of forgot that I read this book and I literally just read it. The final book that I read this month was The Prison Healer. Are you guys ready for this? I had a few of you laughing at my Goodreads comment. What did I rate it, guys? Did I rate it a 3 on Goodreads? I put it down to a 2.5. This book was so boring. However, the amount of hours it took me to read this, I honestly think that I would have just rather like sat and stared at a wall and just been alone with my thoughts. Everybody talks about this book. They're like, the plot twist, this, and that. Why did I guess all of them? And I feel like, can we normalize? And I am somebody who's done this. I am a problem where you saying like, this has a crazy ending, this has a crazy plot twist, blah, blah, blah. When you say that about a book, it then makes somebody go into the book overthinking every single little thing. Meanwhile, if I would have just picked this up but then again, I feel like if I would have picked this up and not known what people were saying about it, I would have put it down. I think I would have DNF'd it. But there were times in this book where I was like, okay, this is interesting and I like the characters, but everything feels insanely repetitive and I feel like I have been reading these same words on the page for the past 300 pages. And then you get to the end of the book, and honestly, I think the ending of the book, even though I did guess it, but I was like, okay, I'll give it a 2.5 because I wasn't having like an awful time reading it. The way I frame it kind of makes it sound like I am having an awful time reading it. I feel like the storyline was kind of bland. Like there isn't a lot to build upon because it is about the girl and she is the prison healer where she's in this like very high security prison. She's there as a prisoner and her job in this prison while she's there is to heal all of the like other prisoners that are in there, and she has this past and stuff, and then this guy comes in and everything kind of starts to go from there. There's like a rebellion going on outside of the like walls in the prison, obviously, and so the rebel queen ends up coming into the prison, and it is her job to like heal her, and she needs to heal her. There are these trials that the rebel queen has to go through that this girl does like in the spot of her, I don't know. And I was like, that sounds interesting. It took us like so long to even get to the main plot line, and I was like, why are we not there yet? And then I thought like, oh, it's gonna speed up, we're gonna start talking about the trials that has to go on. No. And the trials would last like 2 or 3 pages. That's it. I'm like, I would rather have like 10 pages of the trial. I would read 10 pages of the trial. Make them interesting. So the trials were like 2 to 3 pages and then they were over, and that was the only interesting part of the book. I will be reading the rest of the series. One, because Sarah asked me to, and so I'm going to do it. But also because the way that this book ended off, I do feel like the other 2 books have a lot of potential to be better. We didn't end off the month on a great note, but it's fine. I think ultimately though, if I were to say, I think I had a good reading month where I either had strong emotions come out from a book, whether that was good or bad. You know what? I always think that's a win. Anytime you feel an emotion, it's a win. I hope you guys enjoyed yet another monthly reading wrap up here on the channel. This and my TBR, I think, are my favorite videos to film on this channel. I think they're just my favorite. I love to just I love just to not shut up. Can you guys tell? I think you guys can tell. Anyway, thank you so much if you have watched to this point. Literally comment, what emoji should we use? Should we do the disco ball, mirror ball emoji? Let's use the mirror ball emoji if you guys watched up until this point. If you do, you literally deserve like a medal, because I think that I'm a little unhinged today to the utmost energy, and so I'm sorry that you had to sit through this, but thank you so much for sitting through it, and I appreciate you guys sitting through this. So as always, I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching. You guys know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff that you guys know how to do, and you will be seeing my face sometime soon. I will see you guys when I see ya. Peace.